Hello, my name is Jenna Bosiger, and thank you for watching this episode on Cryptic Cryptids YouTube channel about CRYPSIS. And CRYPSIS is the ability of an organism to avoid observation and detection. And I'm going to be looking at CRYPSIS and the animals that use it and the methods of CRYPSIS as it applies to Bigfoot. And then at the end, I want to talk about how Bigfoot and other cryptids are using CRYPSIS to avoid detection and observation. Methods of CRYPSIS include camouflage, nocturnality, subterranean lifestyle, and mimicry. And mimicry can involve not only visual mimicry, but olfactory with pheromones, or even auditory concealment. Not only concealment, but they can use this to imitate other creatures. Now, when it's visual, the term cryptic coloration is an effective synonym for animal camouflage. There's many different types of camouflage, and they include changing color, changing texture. They can also change their shape of their outline, their body or their silhouette, and they can mimic movement of other animals, plants or flowers. And sometimes they're even born with physical features that mimic the appearance of other animals. And another way to conceal themselves is by covering themselves in sediment. Some of the animals that use sediment to conceal themselves are the flounder fish. Alligators often use this technique to even appear like a log, and they put the moss on top of themselves. Tawny frogmouth. And this is not an owl, it's a bird. This bird's feathers match the pattern of wood. The shape of his body is shaped to match the log. Sometimes there have been reports of Bigfoot appearing like an invisible blur, sort of like the predator on Alien, and it was able to momentarily pretty much turn invisible. And there's plenty of invisible creatures that are really fascinating to look at. There's these jellyfish, and jellyfish of different shapes and sizes. I mean, amazing jellyfish, but there's clear fish, there's clear shrimp, dragon seahorses that are shaped to match the kelp, and they also mimic the way that kelp moves. They let their bodies go limp, and then they kind of move like some animals match leaves and sticks and flowers even, like this most amazing orchid praying mantis. Like, look at it, it's shaped, it looks like this fancy flower, and it's just this fancy bug. Identical to a leaf. This looks like identical to a stick, but they're bugs. And then there's these moths and butterflies that on their wings have patterns, and it's obviously not a coincidence or by chance. They're designed to look like eyeballs so that predators don't eat them. Few other animals that have these advanced forms of CRYPSIS, it's not because of the snake itself, but it's because of what's at the end of his tail. A spider, but it's not a real spider. It's a lure. And the pictures of the snakes online, his head will be just holding perfectly still right next to the end of his tail, and then when a bird comes along thinking it's got this huge spider to eat, he's prepared to snap on him and eat him instead, which must be quite a shock to the poor bird. And what about this skull on the back of these moths? This is called a hawk moth. The chameleons and the octopus and even jellyfish are able to control every pore on their skin, and they're able to contract, to tense up or relax, and that will change the color of their body. And they're also able to do it for each individual pore, and that's how they're able to make the patterns, blending into a patterned background. They can make actual patterns and not just match the color. It really starts to make transformation seem more possible, realistic. They're also able to change the shape of their body. So they change the color, they change the textures, they change the shape, and they're also able to mimic the movement. With an octopus, it's almost a complete transformation. There is a movie about habituation, and he spends like 4 years making this movie where he's habituating every day an octopus, and he spends the time it takes to desensitize the octopus to his presence. He's able to film the most incredible things. It's exciting for a documentary too. It's exciting. It's beautiful. It's really keeps you on the edge of your seat. It won an award for Best Documentary. So I'm just highly recommending this to anybody who's interested in trying to make contact with another species. I mean, this is the movie for you. And the name of the movie is My Octopus Teacher on Netflix. Well, what if Bigfoot, the giants, what if they had some hair? What if they even had follicles that were able to look like hair? And the texture and the shape. I know it sounds far-fetched, but look, it's happening. And it is actually therefore possible. And you know what is always stranger than fiction? The truth. Another form of crypsis that Bigfoot might be employing. Well, I remember reading about the Kachinas that the reason they wore disguises is so that they wouldn't scare the people. They're also saying is that like the ram horns, the feathers, the fur, the paint, the body paint, all of these things are attached to them and part of a disguise, an elaborate disguise, but they don't actually have horns. And that also then brings me to another little side note about a type of cryptid that uses huge deer antlers. And that's the cryptid you need to watch out for, because that cryptid is actually using crypsis not to hide or conceal themselves, but to scare people. Skinwalkers. What are skinwalkers known for? They take the skin and the attached head of a dead wolf, and they wear it on top of their heads. They're doing it to terrify people. They have the upper hand. The creatures at Skinwalker Ranch, those creatures are in certain locations, Wendigos and the cannibals, and I don't really know what exactly those creatures are, but I don't think they actually have antlers. But I can't wait to research that. Okay, real quick, some other forms of crypsis using sound and mimicry. And some perfect examples of those are the birds. Certain birds, mimic birds, they can imitate the sound of anything and everything. And sometimes I think they do it for fun, but a lot of times they're doing it to scare predators away. And Bigfoot is well known and been well reported to use coyotes to mimic and hide their calls amongst the coyote sounds. Gorillas emit pheromones. It's very possible that Bigfoot has the ability to emit smells like a skunk does. Another possibility is that Bigfoot is actually covering himself in feces, in dead animals. Thanks so much for watching this